Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 4th and tonight's movie is The Night House. I don't make these lists of movies to watch with the intent of having multiple from the same director, but double dipping does happen occasionally, and it happened this year with this director, David Bruckner. I'm reviewing one other movie he directed. This movie is about a woman who, after her husband is implied to have committed suicide, supernatural things start plaguing her. The trailer and posters show a lot of images of like a dark world or like an alternate reality, doppelgangers, stuff like that. This is also apparently one of those movies where a lot of it is carried by one single person. I can't really think of anything else to say, so I'm gonna go watch it. It always feels great when we get to the first really, really good movie of the month. I'm giving The Night House a 9 out of 10. It was scary, it was well written, it was acted great, and it kept me guessing until the end. A lot like The Last Shift, a lot of how good this movie is can be attributed to the leading performance of the main character, in this case Rebecca Hall as Beth. Obviously things like writing and directing also affect how a character is in a movie, but the acting was really great with her. There were a lot of good moments of interaction with her that felt very genuine. The impression I got is that Beth is a very reserved, kind of emotionally closed off person. And you can see in the interactions she has with other people, especially people who don't know very well, that they seem a little bit, I don't know if intimidated is the right word, but there's like a bit of a wall there. She's not like cold and calculating, but she definitely seems to keep her cards close to her chest and doesn't really let her guard down around many people. I really liked a scene very early in the movie where this was like a few days after her husband committed suicide, and she works as like a teacher, and a parent came in to ask about an assignment, and clearly Beth didn't want to have anything to do with it. There was an interesting kind of push and pull with her kind of being harsh and then her noticing that and backing up a little bit. There's a lot of very good writing with this character and very good acting on the part of Rebecca Hall. I don't really want to go into too much detail about the plot or even the scares because that would be spoiling the big twist of the movie, and I don't want to do that. I would want you to see that yourself if you're interested. There certainly were a couple details that didn't really work out, but overall it was done very well. Just like Hush or Last Shift, The Night House is a character study as much as it is a horror movie. And those two parts of the movie were executed very well. Not perfectly, but very well. The horror wasn't nearly as good as something like Last Shift. It's not as good as that movie, but I really did enjoy watching this movie and really liked the way that it sort of kept me on my toes the whole time. For pretty much 100% of the runtime, I didn't really know where it was going, but I was very interested to find out. If you like horror movies, I would definitely give it a watch. Alright, now I want to talk about spoilers. Please watch the movie. Don't get spoiled by me. See it yourself. Okay, now we're going to start talking about spoilers. My favorite, not even like particular scare, just type of scare in this movie sort of contributes to the main motif of it all. One really good example of this type of scare was in the trailer, but it was subtle enough for me to not even notice it while it was happening. There's a point kind of late in the movie where Beth is in like a garage or a workshop or something, and she's a pillar like in the middle of the room for some reason, and the way that the molding is like curved, it looks like a human face, and when she's standing in just the right spot, both that pillar and like a bookcase in the back sort of create the silhouette of a human form, and it's like a perfect profile too, and she's just staring at it, and then the negative space, the silhouette formed by these objects, it turns its head and looks at her. There are several moments like that where sort of like the negative space is a human silhouette, and then that silhouette moves. And I didn't realize until right before I started recording what the significance of that is. The whole movie is sort of building up to a big twist. You can tell it's coming, but you can't really tell what it's going to be. First, you think maybe it's going to be that her husband discovered like this alternate dark universe or something, because there's a lot of imagery of going into like a parallel world. But then it seems more like the twist was that he was a serial killer while he was alive. But then the real twist comes at the end. Beth had a near-death experience when she was younger where she was clinically dead, like no heartbeat for 4 minutes, and then she came back. And one thing that always haunted her about it is that while she was gone, dead, she didn't see or experience anything. She experienced nothing. And the only person she ever told about this was her husband, Owen, so that adds a little context to the suicide note he left in the middle of the boat. on top of his clothes. For some reason, he went out into the middle of a lake in a boat and then stripped naked to shoot himself. And that stays too. Like, whenever she sees him in the context of like the lake, he's always naked. The only thing I can guess is that maybe they were trying to be subversive. Instead of gratuitous female nudity, there's gratuitous male nudity. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it was just a weird artistic choice. But anyway, the suicide note that he left said, "You were right, there is nothing. Nothing is after you, you're safe now." And that sort of means that the first two lines make sense, but then the second two don't. Eventually, it's revealed that nothing is the name of some sort of entity that is what she experienced when she died. So I guess it's like the void. And this is the part that I do have questions about. It like possessed Owen and then wanted him to kill her. And that's kind of weird, but what's even weirder is that he apparently was able to trick the nothing for a while by repeatedly killing women who sort of look like Beth. Like, it's not even like a perfect doppelganger, it's literally just another skinny woman with dark hair. And it is implied that Owen killed a lot of these women, so I'm wondering how the nothing was able to get fooled so many times. Like, you'd think eventually it would be able to put together that, wait a minute, maybe this isn't the one I'm after. Because, you know, he's already done the same thing like 20 times. I mean, considering the fact that Owen ended up killing himself and acting like that would save her, maybe nothing did put that together, but it took way too long if that's the case. But anyway, the significance of the sort of negative space thing is that it's literally the nothing in between the things that is what we're scared of. And this ultimately leads to Beth, both in real life and in this sort of like alternate dimension, or like the dimension of nothing, being on that boat in the middle of that lake with a gun, and nothing is telling her to come back to it. And earlier in the movie, it had been implied that for a period of time she had been depressed and suicidal. And I don't know if this was entirely on her own, or maybe it was also because she heard the voice of one of her friends, but she decides not to do it. And there's a sort of callback because that same friend earlier was saying, "He's gone, but you're still here. You still have a life to live." And there's a sort of callback by her saying, "I'm here." It was a really good moment of emotional resonance. So I really like this concept. I thought the concept was great. The execution, I think, could have been a little better. Like, nothing isn't actually just a metaphor for depression. It's this actual supernatural entity that wants her dead and had tried to kill her by possessing her husband, but it's just gonna leave her alone now that she decided not to kill herself. And also, for a lot of the movie, that she thinks that this invisible entity stalking her is the ghost of her ex-husband. And there's a point where she like reaches out and like touches it, and you could see like her little fingertips go in, sort of like touching a window. So she's like being felt up by an invisible man, and she's really into it, and she's just standing there moaning and sighing. And if I were her, I don't know if I would have been able to do that without laughing. It was just so silly. There are moments like that that sort of take away from the movie, but overall, I thought it was executed good enough, at least to support this really good concept. The Night House was an excellent character study and a pretty good horror movie. I would recommend it, and it makes me kind of excited to see the other David Bruckner movie I'm reviewing this month. But that'll have to come some other day. I'll see you tomorrow.